So today I'm going to be showcasing this match between myself and Kaalhaarman, who will be playing as the Greenskins. For my build, I'm going for actually a Lizardmen blob build. Big old monster build that I don't usually play in most of my competitive games, and I wanted to get some practice in. Now, in this specific build, I have the Arc of Sotek, which does have the Sotek's Poison, which is essentially a poisoned wind mortar debuff. Now in a circle around it. It's quite good against elite infantry, and that's what I wanted to test in this game. For Kaalhaarman, he has a very wide build with many archers, and he wants to keep those archers online and firing in on my monsters. So to start off, I push forwards with my Pterodon riders. They're going to be getting counter skirmished by these Greenskin skirmishers who did get nerfed recently. And I think my main goal was just trying to distract the archers in this case, just getting a few rock drops off, but a nice rampage does land a few of my Pterodon riders. And even though I cancel that with my anti-rampage ability, they still get routed off. So good play from Kaalhaarman. However, I do manage to shut down the Doom Diver catapults with 2 rock drops. That's a very good play for me. And going into the actual main engagement, the Arc of Sotek dives in. And you can see these black orcs are already having a very rough time. Mazdamundi's abilities are going to be focusing down these archers, especially the rusty arrows, as they are mostly glass cannons, at least more glass cannons compared to the usual archers. And so far I have established quite a dominating lead against the Greenskins to start off with. The Lizardmen known for their very strong single entity blob, but the game is not over yet, as we do see a Skarsnik come on in to face off against the Thunderous one. Goblin Big Boss does get routed off by Mazdamundi though, and Kaalhaarman, he definitely wants to be shooting at my monsters, but the Pterodons are just providing too much of a threat. Another rock drop on the rusty arrows will save me a ton of HP and allow me to focus in on this blob fight. So far things are going quite good for me. I even still have my ROR Temple Guard, and I can freely take these because fanatics have indeed been nerfed. Skarsnik now running for the hills, and it's just honestly just a few archers left. Goblin Big Boss does manage to just barely stick around, but he should get terror routed too. However, these black orcs at half HP are a little bit scary. Now at this stage of the battle, I do a bit of a disengage with my skink cohort, which I have not used too effectively here. They want to be firing in on low armored targets, and the fact that they're undefended means that they'll probably go down to the squig hoppers at this point. As for Skarsnik, it's actually a little bit difficult to chase him down, as just these big monsters are very clunky, and we'll usually have a hard time actually chasing these guys off. Alternatively, I do have my much more mobile Pterodon riders, but they're so beat up now. I was worried that the skirmishers of Kaalhaarman would be able to shut them down. And given the fact that I've spent so much time chasing Skarsnik now, you can see the HP on my Bastiladon Arc of Sotek has gone down quite dramatically. Same with Mazdamundi and the Thunderous one. And all this because I ended up chasing Skarsnik. And that only happened because my Pterodon riders went in a little bit too aggressively. And as all this plays out, the balance of power does go in the favor of Kaalhaarman. And I think it definitely was a pretty bad mistake to not have units to actually chase off these important heroes. At this point, the Bastiladon Arc of Sotek is now running for the hills, getting chased off by a Goblin Big Boss. What a fate to behold. And I do send Mazdamundi back to try and salvage my Temple Guard. That sadly does not help me out. Now, I don't dive Mazdamundi in on the archers. There are a few too many of them, and I don't want to engage them just yet, as Crossfire would likely kill Mazdamundi. So instead, I just leave him closer to the edges, and right now I'm focusing on chasing off Skarsnik with these red-crested skinks. Kaalhaarman does see this happening though. He brings in his Night Goblin Squig Hoppers to try and salvage the situation. And while Mazdamundi did manage to save the Bastiladon, he nearly routes off himself. I do give him the Cold-Blooded passive. It's a really nice ability if your units are about to rout. It will keep them fighting for quite a bit longer. and this does salvage the situation a bit, but look at that balance of power. Kaalhaarman's archer line is very scary here. Mastermoney cannot fight in a big blob of black orcs, but the Arc of Sotek drops its huge AoE on top of all of these units. And like I said, they're basically taking the Poison Wind Mortar debuff. Just huge amounts of damage, and even while the Arc of Sotek runs, these guys are still getting whittled down. Tons of value over there. And back on the left flank, the the cavalry actually do get killed off or chased off by the Thunderous One, and Skarsnik is off for the hills. But here we go, Masamundi at extremely low HP now, and the Thunderous One against tons of archers, quite a few pretty beat up black orcs, and we'll see how this plays out. Now, I have been keeping in mind that Skarsnik is very close to the edge of the map now, and that is why I wanted to take this engagement, because as he routes off the Greenskin units, the leadership breaks, and that means that these archers actually don't have very much in the way of defending them anymore. Mazdamundi plus the Thunderous One just charge straight towards them. I throw down all of my AoEs to try and catch them, and it's a mass rout for the Greenskins. Now, taking a quick look at the top, the balance of power is still very much Greenskin favored, and that's because my troops are still very beat up and these units can still rally. Of course, they're not shattered yet, and it's very important that I actually chase them off. You can see me manually controlling Mazdamundi to try and direct them closer to the white line in this situation, and I don't want to be pushing these guys too aggressively, because the closer I actually get to them, the more likely it will be that they will actually split up into different directions. So just sort of herding them like sheepdogs and trying to do that as best as I can. The Bastildon Arc of Sotek comes back too, which is actually quite big for me, since it does mean it will likely be able to get its AoE down again too. And all in all, it seems like I should have a fairly strong lead despite the balance of power, as long as I can keep herding these units correctly. And that is exactly the plan. I'm mostly positioning here so that these archers get routed off, because these goblins don't scare me nearly as much as everything else. Meanwhile, over here on the left flank, Arc of Sotek does get caught by the rallying squig hoppers, but it throws down another Poison Wind AoE, and that's going to be getting in a really nice amount of damage on these guys, actually, getting them quite close to being terror routed off the moment they run into Mazdamundi. That will definitely be very good for me. Now, the Thunderous One has successfully chased off its respective units. It's now coming in to support Mazdamundi in this final with this final group of units, and essentially this is more or less a one game unless I get a spontaneous rout on Mazdamundi or the Thunderous One. When your big monsters get very low on HP, that can be quite a threat, and I do throw down a heal on the Thunderous One instead of Mazdamundi, because I expect its leadership to be a bit lower in this game. Now, these archers and the goblins do get routed off. And there we go, the balance power does finally go back into my favor. Actually, a pretty crazy back and forth here, given a bit of the misplay, trying to chase off Skarsnik. But finally going into this late stage of the game, I do chase off the archers, and then it is going to be leading to the final battle against this Night Goblin Shaman and the Squig Hoppers. So, no more suspense here. The archers are surely going to get chased off, and essentially, Kaalhaarman's just going to be trying to get the best engagement he can here. He does have 2 units of cavalry, so they will be able to pick and choose their engagement a little bit better. He does buff up these Squig Hoppers to try and beat down Mazdamundi, but they get annihilated on the charge, just with their already low HP. Even though they do have ITP, I believe, and they do get routed off. And my leadership does not dip very much. Thunderous One even throwing down a lightning bolt on top of them. And the balance power does look pretty close, but my 2 units will be able to defeat 200 at this point. Essentially, there's nothing left that can really duel them, and everything is going to be terror routing off the map more or less immediately. I have a ton of abilities too that reset on Massimundi as time goes on. And Kaalhaarman knows that the game, sadly, is over for him. And there we go, a fairly interesting big old monster blob type of play. But definitely something that you want to know how to handle, even if you don't play it that often. I personally prefer kiting as Lizardmen quite often, but it's very important to practice this particular playstyle. For Kaalhaarman, he did go for more of a standard build, and he actually did quite good. In fact, his archers got in quite a bit of damage, even the Black Orcs too, despite me more or less trying to counter them. But take a look at the values of my units between Massimundi, the Thunderous One, and the Ark of Sotek, which did pay for itself by 50%. That was really all I needed to defeat the Greenskins this time. That's going to be it for today, and hopefully I'll be covering more of these matches in the future.